In this lesson, we will be discussing the central, peripheral, and autonomic nervous systems and explaining the difference between the parasympathetic and sympathetic branches of the nervous system. We will also be looking at the responses in the body to sympathetic, also called adrenergic, stimulation, and parasympathetic, also known as cholinergic stimulation. First, let's define the central and peripheral nervous systems. The central nervous system is comprised of the brain and spinal cord, and peripheral nervous system contains sensory or afferent neurons, somatic or motor neurons, which are responsible for voluntary muscle control such as walking, lifting, etc., and autonomic nervous system, which controls the automatic mechanisms in the body such as our hearts beating fast or slowly, pupils dilating or constricting, and smooth muscle contraction relaxation in the lungs. Let's take a look at one of the two branches of the autonomic nervous system. The first one we'll discuss is the parasympathetic system. We like to refer to this as the rest and digest system. Think about how you feel after a big Thanksgiving dinner. It is responsible for the day-to-day functions such as digestion, bladder and rectal discharge, and mucus production in the bronchi. The term SLUD refers to an overstimulation of the system. SLUD stands for salivation, lacrimation, which is tear production, urination, and defecation. Our common bug sprays contain parasympathetic stimulators. On the other branch of the peripheral nervous system, we have the sympathetic side, or fight or flight system. It is responsible for increasing heart rate and blood pressure, blood sugar increases, and bronchial dilation. Therefore, it is therapeutic indications for respiratory care. Now, let's look at the neurotransmitters for both the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that carry a signal from one neuron to another neuron. On both branches, there are two jumps from one neuron to the final neuron, which is called the neuroeffector site. This is where the action happens, such as eye dilation, etc. The neurotransmitter for the parasympathetic side is acetylcholine, and the neurotransmitter on the sympathetic side is norepinephrine. This next slide shows the common terminology for drugs related to both of these branches. First, we have the term parasympathomimetic. The term mimetic means to mimic, and therefore medications that are parasympathomimetic mimic the responses of the parasympathetic system. They are also called cholinergic drugs because of the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Next, we have parasympatholytics. The term lytic means to go against, and drugs in this category go against the parasympathetic side. They are also referred to as anti, which means against, cholinergics. In the next category is the term sympathomimetic, mimicking the sympathetic side, also called adrenergic, which is the neuroeffector site on the sympathetic branch. It is comprised of alpha-1 and 2, beta-1 and 2, and dopaminergic receptors that we will discuss later. Lastly, the term sympatholytic, going against the sympathetic system, and the term anti-adrenergic are drugs that act the opposite of the sympathetic system. Parasympathetic effects on the body are as follows. In the cardiopulmonary system, you will see a decrease in heart rate, blood pressure, and respiratory rate, and importantly for use, bronchoconstriction. In the eye, miosis, which is pupil contraction, increased motility in the digestive system, and increased insulin production. The prototype for all parasympathetic or cholinergic drugs is acetylcholine, and the drug of most importance in this category is methacholine. We use methacholine in bronchoprovocation tests called methacholine challenge to diagnose asthma due to its bronchoconstrictive tendencies. For anticholinergics or parasympatholytics, the prototype is atropine, which we know is used to treat symptomatic bradycardia. In addition to raising heart rate, anticholinergics also produce bronchodilation and drying of secretions. These body responses occur on the neuroeffector site on the parasympathetic side, termed muscarinic. On the sympathetic side, when stimulated, we see increases of heart rate, blood pressure, and respiratory rate, and most importantly, bronchodilation. In the eye, we see mydriasis, or pupil dilation, decreased motility in the GI tract, and decreased insulin production. The receptors on the sympathetic side of importance to us are alpha-1 and 2, which are responsible for blood vessel constriction, thereby raising blood pressure. Beta 1 is responsible for increased heart rate and contractility. Beta 2 for bronchial smooth muscle relaxation, producing bronchodilation. And dopaminergic receptors, which stimulate it, produce renal vessel relaxation. Wrapping up, we will be focusing on both sympathomimetic or adrenergic medications and parasympatholytic anticholinergic medications and their role as bronchodilators in future lectures.